Okay, overshot that a bit. Hey. Also, ow. Welcome back to yet another episode. Today I'm doing something pretty cool, pretty exciting. I'm really actually excited to talk about these movies finally. In honor of Sonic the Hedgehog hitting theaters a couple weeks ago, or last week as of recording this video, I wanted to do a video talking about the 90s video game movie adaptation. So video games to movies in the 90s. There were 6 of them, and I'm going to talk about each and every one of them. I grew up in the 90s, this is my era, so I have a lot of fond memories for all of these films, except for one that I didn't see until a couple weeks ago, but I'll get to that. It's not going to be a ranking or anything, but I will note my least favorite and my favorite while going through them. I'd love to know what your favorite 90s video game to movie adaptation is. 90s in particular, because I do plan to do a noughts version of this and a tens version of this. I'm talking about each video game to movie adaptation. I just couldn't crunch them all into one video because there are a shit ton now. Keep in mind also this is live action and American produced. So US produced. I'm not doing the Japanese ones. There's a bunch of Japanese animated films from the 90s, like Street Fighter the movie, things like that. That'll be for another video. So this is going to be 90s video game to movie adaptations, live action, and US produced. Let's do it. I'm going to do these in order, so that means that Super Mario Bros. Is first up. 1993, this is the one that broke the ice and opened up the doors for other video game franchises, video game creators to issue their rights to Hollywood filmmakers to make them into movies. So this was the movie that started it all. And I'll tell you what, I saw this back in the early 90s, probably around when it came out when I was 5 or 6, because I was already playing the games and everything like that, so I was very excited to see this. And you know what? I didn't give a shit that it didn't have much to do with the game. In fact, I don't even buy that criticism because it has a shit ton to do with the game. It's an alternate dimension. You could call Mushroom Kingdom Mario's World an alternate dimension. Sure. It starts with a really bad MS Paint animation talking about how dinosaurs and humans split evolutionarily. The dinosaurs evolved in one dimension, humans evolved into another, apes into humans. The screenwriters had fun with it, but that's the thing. They had full creative license per Nintendo. Nintendo was like, here you go, guys. We don't know how to make movies. Make a good movie. And the screenwriters tried their damnedest to turn a simple platforming game. At that point, it was a little bit more complex with Super Mario World, but they turned a platformer game into a live-action film. It was the first time anybody had ever done anything like this, so I give it up to the screenwriters, all 3 of them, I believe. They did the best job that they could with the source material. I strongly believe that. Yes, they took liberties. They tried to tell a really cool, compelling sci-fi fantasy kind of story that I still think is pretty fun. It's not great, but it's fun. And this movie has tons of references to the Mario universe. Tons. Every freaking other frame, there is a reference. There's a Bob-omb. There's the thwomps. There's like thwomp boots. There's a couple sound effects in there. Hell, when the movie starts, it has a chiptune version of the Mario theme song, which we all know and love. I wish that made, since they had full creative license here, I wish that made its way into the film a little bit more. I do like the score. It's playful. It's kind of derivative of a lot of other 90s things. It always reminds me of like Beethoven and movies like that. But it is what it is. Not a bad score. I do wish they incorporated more Mario music. And you gotta love Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo, who are not really hamming it up. They're taking it pretty seriously, I think. I mean, they're hamming it up a little bit, but it seems like they're taking it seriously, which further proves their acting abilities, because I've read that they were on set drinking whiskey while shooting this film because it was that abysmal of a production. So that's pretty funny, but they're good enough actors that I don't see that. I don't see that in their performances. I think they take it seriously, and I think they have a lot of fun with it, but I guess they didn't. Either way, This was the first of its kind, and I adore it to this day. I saw it in theaters a couple years ago, actually. They did this big thing with a few people from the film. It was a blast. That was around the time where I started my YouTube channel, actually. I love this movie. I don't care what anybody says. I recognize its flaws, but I also recognize that if it wasn't a Super Mario Brothers movie and it was some other weird fantasy, science fiction IP, if it was its own thing, I bet you it'd be recognized more as a genre cult classic, which it kind of has become, to be quite honest. So, I love Super Mario Brothers the movie, and you gotta admire this beautiful steelbook from overseas. I always want to show this off when I can, because it really is just gorgeous. I mean, it's so well done. So, and the inside is really nice, too. Well, not really nice, but it has black and white photo there, and the disc, of course. I wish it had some sort of card, but it doesn't. One other thing to mention, one other kind of trivia thing, this film was directed by Rocky Morton and Annabelle Jankel. They got their chance to do a feature film coming off of Max Headroom. Yes, they are the creators of Max Headroom who went on to do this movie. I don't think they did much work after this, sadly. But that is Super Mario Brothers, the movie. Super Mario Brothers opened the door for video game to movie adaptations, and the next one that came out in early '94 was actually Double Dragon. Double Dragon came out in '94 and is directed by James Yukich, who I don't really know that name. I don't know what else he's done, to be quite honest. I would presume not much after this one. Now, here's the thing about Double Dragon. I like this movie. Spoilers, I enjoy every movie on this list for different reasons. Some movies I think are better than others. Some movies I think are shit. I'll get to that. But I still have fun with them. Double Dragon is somewhere in between that. It's pretty shitty. I gotta admit, it's incoherent in terms of the story it's trying to tell, which is super simple. But it excels in a few areas that I don't think people give it enough credit for. Sort of the same areas that I think Super Mario Bros. Excels in. Production design, the color schemes, the vibrancy, just the colorful nature of these films. This takes place in a really cool sort of well, it is kind of post-apocalyptic. I guess an earthquake has wiped out LA, and it's this barren, water world wasteland, essentially. It's not really, it's got some deserty areas, desert-like areas with broken down vehicles and things like that. But yeah, it's a simple story about the Lee brothers who have half of a dragon medallion, and Robert Patrick's character has the other half of the medallion, and so it's just the villain trying to find the medallion, and our two lead characters bumbling about trying to figure out what the hell's going on and what their importance is. That's really the story in a nutshell. This movie stars Scott Wolf and Mark Dacascos. Believe it or not, I'm a huge fan of Mark Dacascos. In fact, I have a pretty cool video plan that I'm going to be doing on him. But this one is one of his earliest films. He was coming off of Only the Strong, and I think this was a year after American Samurai, too. American Samurai, Mark Dacascos, I believe it was his first performance. It was his introduction, and he played a bad guy. And then he would do Only the Strong, the capoeira martial arts movie, and then he would go on to do Double Dragon. So he was starting to gain some steam. He probably saw an opportunity for a big, kind of a decent budget Hollywood film, and he took it. And his physicality is really wasted here because he's such a talented martial artist and acrobatic in nature, and the cinematography and editing really don't do much to highlight this man's skills, which is a shame. Scott Wolf is in here too. He's okay. They play the brothers, the Lee brothers, Billy and Jimmy Lee, and Robert Patrick is in this as a Japanese bad guy whose name I forgot. It's from the games, I believe, but yeah, so he plays a Japanese bad guy, or maybe half Japanese, or a quarter Japanese, whatever. It's a whitewashed role. What can I say? Lastly, the film has Alyssa Milano, who is a lot of fun in this role. This is definitely one of her earliest roles. She's also smoking hot. Beautiful. I can't stress it enough. Every time I watch this, I'm just I'm drooling, because she is just absolutely gorgeous. And that goes back to when I was a kid, 6 or 7 years old, watching this. I thought she was the cutest thing on the planet. Still do. This movie is still a lot of fun. It's got some goofy, absurd action scenes, like the car chase in the beginning. But it's lit really well, and it has just a nice aesthetic to it. It's fun to look at. And despite it not being shot and edited and acted very well, it has this I hate to use the word, but this cheesiness to it that reminds me of these sorts of movies from the 80s, just action heavy, bright colors, vibrant, and that is what Double Dragon excels in. It's not a great film. It has tons of issues. Everyone hates this movie, but I still have fun with it about once a year or so, I gotta admit. And this is the PAL version, I want to say the German version, judging by the language, I believe. German version, uncut Double Dragon. So this is the way to find it. It looks great. Not perfect, but the transfer is really good, and I had to get this on Blu-ray when I found out it was out. That is Double Dragon. Alright, so coming off the non-success of Super Mario Bros. The movie and Double Dragon, later in '94, we got Street Fighter the movie. This film is directed by Steven E. D'Souza, who is mostly known as a writer. I mean, he's written some heavy-hitter action films in his day, like Die Hard, the greatest action film ever made, and Die Hard 2. He also did Commando, another one of the greatest action films ever made. So this guy knew action. He knew what he was doing. Now, he hadn't directed anything since the 70s, since he was like an up-and-coming writer and filmmaker. So they gave him a chance to direct Street Fighter the movie. And wow, this film is a mess. Oh my god, it is a convoluted mess of a movie. Part of it has to do with how many characters they jam-packed into this motherfucker. I mean, it's a roll call in the first 20 minutes of Street Fighter characters, which is always fun for me. Oh, look, there's Zangief, there's DJ, and Dalsim. They're packing all these characters with not much rhyme or reason, not much explanation as to who they are. In fact, some of the actors didn't even understand their roles, like the guy who played Dalsim, which was such a confusing choice with that character. And I've seen this movie 100 times, and I gotta be honest, the plot is so simple but convoluted that I still don't know what the hell this movie's about. I mean, I do, in essence. It's very simple. Bison is sort of he's a terrorist, essentially, and he's trying to create this utopia of terror. And the Street Fighter guys aren't letting that happen, so it's just an arms race to try to get Bison before he makes all these bad decisions for the world. And that's basically it. But Jean-Claude Van Damme, as everybody knows, plays Guile. Because when you think of Guile, you think of America, blonde hair, blue-eyed American. And so who do we cast? We cast Van Damme, who has a broken English accent, which I love, by the way. It's just an odd choice for Guile. It just doesn't really make much sense. Other actors we have here, Ming-Na Wen as Chun-Li, who's always nice to watch. You've got Byron Mann, who I love, who I wish got more work in the 90s. He is in Wu Assassins most recently, which is nice. But he plays Ryu. Damien Chapa plays Ken. There are a bunch of not quite B-movie, but A to B movie character actors like Wes Studi. The man who steals the show is Raul Julia. This is one of the last performances he gave before he was taken from us by goddamn cancer. And it's the sweetest thing, too, because he wasn't going to do this movie, but his kids loved Street Fighter, and they wanted him to do this movie. So it always gets me choked up. It's one of those things that Raul was like, I'll do it for you kids. I know I'm not going to be here for much longer. Something to remember me by. And goddamn did he give it his all. He is one of the main reasons to see this movie. Some of his dialogue is just hilarious. And he takes it with so much conviction. He always gave it his all, no matter what the script demanded he did. And Steven D'Souza, who usually is a great action writer, just some of these lines of dialogue, it's like I feel bad that these actors had to deal with some of the dialogue they had to deal with in this plotting, convoluted script. But it is what it is. All that said, I still love this movie. Honestly, I watch it once a year easily. It's a feel-good movie. I watched it when I was a kid, when I was 6 or 7 years old. And all these movies I have a nostalgic attachment to. And I absolutely adore all of them for different reasons. Again, while recognizing they're not great. Ironically, Lionheart is on this five film set here. And I think that is so funny because Lionheart is a better Street Fighter movie. It really is. I feel like Lionheart is what the Street Fighter movie should have been. Just a newcomer making his way up the ranks of street fighting circuits. But no, we got Street Fighter the movie, and I am actually eternally grateful. So thank you, Steven E. D'Souza, for making one of the most notoriously bad, good, fun, wholesome movies. I love Street Fighter the movie. Now, in 1995, Paul W.S. Anderson would enter the video game movie ring. with Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat! Bum, 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 bum. Everybody knows this movie. Everybody. And if you don't know the movie, you know the theme song. Mortal Kombat! It's the greatest thing ever. It enhances this movie tenfold, I gotta be honest. But this is my favorite video game adaptation on this list. There's one in the 2000s that I think I'd have to really think about which one I like more. But as of right now, I'd say Mortal Kombat is my favorite. I love it. I actually think it's a great action fantasy movie. I really do. Outside of it being a Mortal Kombat movie, which I think it does really well, it adapts all the characters and the mythology in a really cool way. And the early games didn't give us much in terms of mythology. They gave us some, enough for Paul W.S. Anderson to craft a world that feels right. It feels cohesive enough. I unabashedly love this movie. I love the action. I think the action's shot really well. I think Paul W.S. Anderson knows how to shoot action. It's not this Chad Stahelski level, but he has a really kinetic and dynamic style behind the camera when it comes to the action, and even his just his set design. I love the set design in this film. It has that ancient Asian mysticism going on. It's got like the ancient tribal sort of affectations and the just the design of the interiors of the buildings. I love the look of this film, the lighting, the reds, the greens, the blues, the diversity of locations, like when Johnny Cage is in the forest with Sub-Zero. Then they're fighting sort of in hell, essentially. It's got all these rickety bridges and stuff like that. And and there are a bunch of shots during that fight sequence with, actually, I think it's Scorpion, not Sub-Zero and Johnny Cage. But when Scorpion and Johnny Cage are fighting in that hell-like setting, there are some wide side shots that always reminded me of the game, and I thought that was a nice conscious decision on Anderson's part to sort of harken back. The only thing that the film is really missing, and I use that word lightly because I think the film works very well without it. Would I have preferred it with it? Yeah, I think I would have, and that's the gore. The fatalities. I mean, there are a couple fatalities without the blood, but it just doesn't feel 100% Mortal Kombat. And I get it, though. I mean, they wanted to appeal. This is a video game movie. I mean, in the 90s. They knew that kids were playing Mortal Kombat probably more than adults. I would wager that kids were playing it more than adults. So they wanted kids to be able to go see the movie. And I think that was a wise choice. But I do wish there was some gory fatalities and some gory executions. That would have been awesome. That would have added to the film for sure. All the characters we know and love from the Mortal Kombat games, and I think this one is based on 1 and 2. I believe 1 and 2 had come out up to that point. But all of our characters are there. I mean, Liu Kang, Raiden, Christopher Lambert plays Raiden, Robin Shou plays Liu Kang and does a great job. Johnny Cage, I forget the guy who did Johnny Cage, but he did an awesome job too. And each one gets sort of their origin story in the very beginning, in the first in the first 20 minutes, it shows a few minutes each of, each character in their environment, in their setting that they navigate in. Like Johnny Cage is on a movie set. Sonya is carrying out some sort of a raid of some sort, trying to find someone. That actually ties into the main story. Jax is there briefly, albeit. You got Kano, you got Scorpion, you got Sub-Zero. You've got all of them. All of them are here. And the film does a much better job with roll calling. It's not like they introduce all of them in the first 20 minutes and are like, you know nothing about them. No. When they introduce the characters, they show you what that character is about. For the most part, for the majority of the characters. Others pop up here and there with a little bit of exposition as to who they are, but it's really, really well done. So much better done than all 3 prior films that I've talked about up to this point. So Paul W.S. learned something from the prior video game films and really incorporated that into Mortal Kombat, and I think it really, really shows. And Anderson he takes it serious enough behind the camera, but he knows that this is an over-the-top world and story. And so it never feels cheesy. I mean, honestly, I really don't feel like this movie's cheesy. Maybe some of the dialogue comes across a little bit so, but it really is in line with just sort of the the vibe of the video game. Honestly, I really do feel that way. And I think Paul W.S. Anderson approaching it that way really is what makes this film work. I think he was having fun with it. And I think he was a fan of the game. He was a kid. He was fun. He was young. He was in his 20s, you know? And I feel like he took all that and just made a fun movie that he knew fans would enjoy. And fans did enjoy this, especially this fan. Now, what elevates this movie to honestly, it's a 4 out of 5 in my book. I love this movie. The music is quintessentially dance 90s. Like 90s dance music, pumping soundtrack. Oh my god, it's incredible. Now, the soundtrack was done, the score was done by George S. Clinton, who does a great job accompanying the soundtrack, which was done by a group called the Immortals from the 90s. I believe they were a British Europop, Eurodance kind of group, and they came in to do the soundtrack to this movie, and I swear to God, it is so perfect. I mean, I can't stress it enough. Listen to the music by itself, because they weren't able to get all the music into this film, but the music is incredible, including the theme, which we hear a couple times throughout the movie. And there's one time where it pops up with Sonya and Liu Kang and Johnny Cage, who are fighting a bunch of bad guys, and it is so fist-pumpingly awesome. I always get up off my seat and I'm like, yeah! Mortal Kombat! It's just, I get so fucking pumped at that scene. I love this movie. What can I say? It's my favorite video game movie, at least on this list. There's one other that might be over this, but that'll be for another video in the knots. So, Mortal Kombat the movie, I absolutely love it. My favorite on this list. Next up is on this set as well. That is Mortal Kombat Annihilation. This movie came out in 97, and it is my least favorite on this list. But I love it. I love it. Directed by John Leonetti, who would go on like a decade and a half later, 2 decades later, to direct Annabelle and Wish Upon, so just like these throwaway moneymaker horror movies. But he really got to show off his skill in Mortal Kombat Annihilation. Now, he's a cinematographer by trade, and so the movie looks okay in terms of the way it's shot. I mean, there are a lot of Dutch low angles that I think he thought were edgy. I don't know. It's okay. It's not shot too badly. The color scheme of this film is just like violet. It's just like, it's like purple, violet, blue, indigo. I don't know how to explain it. But it's not quite blue, it's not quite red. It's somewhere in the middle of those. And it has a really cheap look to it. And the CG, I forgot to mention the CG in Mortal Kombat, which was used sparingly and to great effect, I thought. And it also mixed practical effects in there, like Goro. He was actually practical, assisted with a little bit of CG, I believe. And Paul W.S. Anderson used the CG well in the original Mortal Kombat. Leonetti does not use the CG well in this film, and there is way too much of it. It's not lit well. It looks laughably bad. I mean, some video games that came out in 97, 98 had better animated cutscenes in terms of CG than this did. It looks bad. They used some of the same CG animations a few times, like over and over. It's really bad, but it is so funny, and it is so fun to watch this movie. I could watch this movie alone, but when I watched this for the first time, or second time technically, with friends a few years back, I was like, this is one of the greats. This is one of the best bad movies I have ever seen, and I hold true to that. The acting is abysmal. Actually, it replaced all of the people we loved from the first one, almost all. Christopher Lambert's been replaced by James Remar as Raiden. He's whatever, he's just there. And his stunt double is actually in it more than he is, who was played by the guy who did Toad in X-Men, Ray Park. And actually, some of the fight sequences here are pretty well shot and choreographed, but that's because they had actual martial artists probably choreographing them and helped shoot them. But like the scene between Raiden, and I forgot who he was fighting, but that fight was actually pretty well shot and well executed because of Ray Park and his the other guy doing it with him. Robin Shou is still there, but he looks like he's confused. He's like, what happened? Where's Mr. Anderson? Like, what is this? Like, he knew he was making a shitty fucking movie. So it's good to see him back, but he's just kind of there for the ride. Sonya's been recast. but a bunch of people. Jax has been recast. He's in it. He's got a bigger part in it. He's okay. It's just everybody's just okay, but funny to watch because the dialogue is abysmal. What's the line in the beginning where one of the chicks is like, "You will die."
Mother, you're alive. Too bad you will die.
I can't believe the director okayed that take. Maybe they were making a cheesy movie intentionally. I don't know. But holy shit is this film cheesy. It is a classic of a bad special effect movie from the 90s. It really is. The casting is head-scratching. I am very confused at some of the decisions they made here. Like Shao Kahn is like this 5'6" white guy. I don't know. His mask is way too big. It just doesn't... He's never imposing, never scary. And actually, his superior is even less imposing and scary. Another just random white guy. Looks like some Irish guy that they got to play like the big bad. It's so bad. But goddamn, guys, is this film fun. It is my least favorite on the list, but I still have a blast watching this. I love it. I love watching this movie. It is so funny. And it's a good lesson on how not to make an action film. That is Mortal Kombat Annihilation. Last up, I do own this movie, but it is in a box in the closet that I do not feel like going through to find it. This movie is actually out of print now, so the DVD and the Blu-ray are worth quite a bit. That is Wing Commander. Now, this is a PC game. This was the first PC game to movie adaptation in '99. Wing Commander was on consoles, but it started out on PC. In fact, I've only played the 3DO version of Heart of the Tiger, and I've not played much of it. I've only played a little bit of it, and it's great. And it's made by Chris Roberts. Chris Roberts is the creator of Wing Commander. He designed a bunch of the games, and he was sort of the lead on a lot of the games. And interestingly enough, the studio gave him the movie Wing Commander. They gave it the live-action version of Wing Commander, a Hollywood version, to Chris Roberts to see what he could do with it, which I think is a really interesting thing. I guess the people that hired him had seen the games, saw that there was a cinematic quality to them. In fact, the games are partially live action, or FMV as we would have called them in the 90s, but they have real actors playing out an actual story that the player gets to interact with every once in a while, or not every once in a while, more than that, but I don't want to downplay the gameplay. But, so these are essentially live-action games anyway, so they hired him to do a live-action version of the movie, a liver-action version of the movie. So, Wing Commander, I watched for the first time last month, actually, and after everybody had panned it on the internet, and nobody likes this movie, nobody enjoys this one, except for me. I liked it! I really enjoyed it. I was like, this is gonna be shit, I know it. But man, this is a fun B science fiction action flick. It really is. It's got a solid cast. Freddie Prinze Jr. It was 99, so Freddie Prinze Jr. Matthew Lillard, who's like bleach blonde. He looks kind of like Eminem, and he plays a character named Maniac, who doesn't really live up to his name. Really, he was actually a character in the older games. I believe Heart of the Tiger he was in. And it's got Saffron Burrows, who was big in the late 90s, early 2000s, or not huge, but she was popular then. It's got some veterans to round out the cast: Checky Cario, David Suchet, David Warner, and who else? Jurgen Prochnow. So really solid veteran cast there, those four guys that really ground the film with some good acting. The script isn't that bad. It's not great, but it's not that bad. It's a simple story about the Kilrathi, who are one of the main alien races in the games. The Kilrathi are trying to get to Earth to destroy it, or to enslave, or to do something. A couple ships are sent. What are the names of the ships? Tiger's Claw and the Diligent. The Diligent? Maybe? Are sent to stop the Kilrathi fleet from reaching Earth. Very simple story. It's got some really cool CG space battles, and yes, I said very cool. I think the CG holds up pretty well. I mean, you're going to go into this knowing you're going to get some shoddy CG, but David Roberts knows how to work with it. I think he does a fine job. Chris Roberts, not David Roberts, Chris Roberts. I think he does a really good job with the CG action battles, the space battles. They're really well shot, they're well laid out, you understand the geography of the scene. The ship design could be a little bit better, but it's not awful. I've seen worse in like 80s B movies, I've seen worse, even 90s B movies. Not bad, and the characters I actually ended up caring about quite a bit. Matthew Lillard has a love interest who I forgot her name, but she was really cool too. And, you know, and Freddie Prinze has a love interest as well in Saffron Burrows. And I actually ended up caring about these characters' fates. When you put this movie on, just promptly adjust to the fact that you're watching a film from the late 90s that is experimenting with a new technology. And I think it does a fine job. This is a fun movie with a lot of heart, believe it or not, I think, and a competent enough director behind the camera to give us a cohesive, simple story. I really enjoyed this movie. It was a 3 out of 5 for me. So that is Wing Commander. That is the last live-action video game adaptation from the US in the 90s, and I wanted to come here and talk about each and every one with you guys, sort of in excitement for Sonic, which I am excited to see. I do want to do a video covering the Naughts video game adaptations and the past decades video game adaptations. Again, US live action. The other ones, like the animated films and the stuff from Japan, I'll do in another video for sure, but that is what I'm going to focus on for this series. So I really love talking about all these films that I'm super nostalgic for. I grew up with the majority of these films, and I still love all of them for different reasons. I really, really do. And so I'm wondering what your favorite movie in this list, out of the 6 that I talked about, what your favorite movie is. Feel free to leave that down in the comments below, and we could get a little discussion rolling as usual. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, feel free to give it a thumbs up, and if you're new to the channel and want to see more videos like it, go ahead and hit the subscribe button as well as the little bell for notifications. Anyway guys, I will see you all next time. Bored Cyborg out. Mortal Kombat!
You win!